Okay, Mad World. The year was 1996, and it was November, and this was our internet in the martial art world. It was the magazine. Black Belt Magazine and Inside Kung Fu were primarily the two forms of media content that told us and kept us informed about things in the martial art world. Now, there were others. Um, Martial Arts Illustrated, and of course you had your pro wrestling and boxing magazines. But the primary two for martial arts stories, content, talked about styles, it talked about individuals. It was Black Belt Magazine and Inside Kung Fu. So today we're going to take a look at Black Belt and see what's going on. I just pulled this one out randomly. It was extra thick, had about 170 pages. And that was unusual back then because normally they ran somewhat 110, 100 to 115 pages, no more. So this was a super duper issue. I'm not sure what it was about, but you had to be there in the moment to kind of realize it. And that time it has gone and passed. But anyway, we take a look at the cover. Yamaguchi was a legend in the karate world. They were talking about the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Here's the funny thing: like we're talking about Ultimate Fighting Championship and the mixed martial arts, and Inside Kung Fu and Black Belt Magazine had always been talking about linking the styles. Here we're talking about Wing Chun and the Tai Chi connection. So the concept of mixed martial arts has always been there, but putting it together in a format where you could demonstrate your skills has not always been there. And here we talk about classical jiu-jitsu. Can it compete with the Brazilian systems? And that's another thing that you'll see in a lot of the magazines of this time. That probably for the first 4 or 5 years that came out after the Ultimate Fighting Championship, they were always trying to default back to the classic and traditional martial arts. They didn't want to believe that jiu-jitsu had any foothold or dominance in the world of martial arts. They didn't want to believe that mixed martial arts was going to change anything. So this was a common theme and something you saw a lot. So if you do find magazines from around this era, you'll see writers, and a lot of it was just these freelance writers who had their personal opinions, but none of them really ever fought. And you will later on see where guys like Ken Shamrock, Frank Shamrock, I think Boss Root, and some other guys who eventually started doing commentary, they also started doing articles. Um, I like this article here because it talks about giving your axe kicker, your attacker, a good axe kicking. A good play on words there, but it's relevant to me because just recently, a few guys sent me a link on my Facebook, talking about a guy who used an inside crescent kick, which could be similar to an axe kick, depending on the way you throw it. And it's good. It was good to see that you still can use these classical martial art techniques in the world of MMA. I just don't think that you can depend on the whole art or use the whole art as is defined early on. So good stuff. Let's turn the pages. Some things that I like here, where you see the advertisements and you see Black Belt saying, "Hey, get our jacket," and talking about their T-shirt and the watch. And this is a substitute now where back then but now it's substituted with everybody who promotes their stuff online. They give you a video and say, "Hey, sign up for my newsletter or take my course, my online course, sign up for my school academy, get the t-shirt, get the hat, table of contents." And of course, advertisements, from other companies. He had Century back here back in the day. Century was probably the big producer of goods back then. And now you have so many that have crossed over. I think that's what mixed martial arts has done, has opened up the doors where you even see like Ringside, the boxing equipment company, step into the realm of MMA and offer some goods. And competition is good in my opinion. Good layout for the Black Belt magazine. One of the things I liked here was the letter, and there was a letter here where the guy talks about, you know, full contact shows selling violence, and he can't support it anymore. He was talking about the martial art concepts, the respect, saying that, you know, MMA has gotten a little too violent and it's all the selling, you know, and he wasn't impressed with the whole idea of, you know, the Gracies and all that. So I thought it was a good article that he talked about this stuff, a good letter written into the company. But one of the things that bugged me about it is, you know, again, you don't, this guy probably never fought in MMA, and then, and it's very opinionated about it, but at the same time, you're like, it's 1996, so the show's been out at least 3 years. So it took you 3 years to make your mind up that, you know, you're not going to support it anymore. You know, so I thought that was I thought that was a little, you know, distasteful in a way. Like, hey, if you had something to say, you should have said it in '93. Um, Videos by George Dillman, and this was the guy back in the day talking about 1 point pressure knockouts and all that stuff. And now we know a lot of that stuff just doesn't work. Scientific street fighting, Jeet Kune Do. A lot of Jeet Kune Do happened right after Bruce Lee died, and so you're going to see a lot of Jeet Kune Do practitioners step up, and people always wonder, like, if they were so closely tied to MMA, and a lot of them say they're not, and why don't we see them winning in MMA? And you do see the fighters. Again, I just don't think it's an art that's used in the whole sense. I think you see some touch and goes here, some movements like John Jones's sidekick, and then even the purists will debate, oh, he's not using it the way we use it, you know. But you see the influence. Kathy Long was a kickboxing champion back in the day. Here she has a segment. Of course, you gotta love the. A lot of you guys probably don't know about, you know, this used to be a TV show that used to come on Saturdays, the World Martial Arts Council, and these guys would almost dress up like superheroes and do these prearranged fights. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu advertisement. I actually think I have this. This is Pedro Carvalho. I might have this series. I know I'll probably have tapes 1 through 5. I might not have 6, 7, and 8, but I know somewhere I've got tapes. And that's right, we used to have tapes, long ass, heavy ass tapes that get, you know, hard to replace when they're broken, and hard to find today unless someone's transferred them online. And but when you had to lug them around, you know, for whatever reason, creating a library, because one of the gyms I trained at, the instructor had a library in the gym, so lugging around all these tapes, man, had to be a chore. Again, Linda Lee Caldwell, Bruce Lee's wife, she has an article or a segment in the magazine. They talked about places where that were, you know, poignant. John Funk was a monkey style kung fu stylist, and a lot of these things deal with the history of martial arts. Talk about Superfoot Wallace. You know, they talk about the history. They talk about the culture. I think that's if there's anything that today's mixed martial arts guys can learn, is that we can learn from that. Is that we have to create a culture. I do get tired of seeing, you know, where some guy affiliated with a martial art gym, mixed martial art gym, is accused of violence, or, you know, violence outside of the cage or the ring area, and some type of violence against children, you know, abuse against children and things of that nature. Secrets of speed hitting, yeah. You know, I don't know anybody who actually bought these courses. You know, if you know somebody who bought these courses, let me know. I like to know if they actually worked out. You know, I think any of us who had any association with boxing or kickboxing, or anybody who understood performance training, you know, we didn't use stuff like this, you know, because this was just clickbait to get you to buy in, you know, waste of money to some degree. American Kempo systems, everybody had, you know, Jeff Speakman, you know, I forget what was the name of that movie. Was it The Perfect Weapon? Yeah, it was The Perfect Weapon. I think it was The Perfect Weapon. And I didn't know who he was, but this was actually a good movie, you know. Speakman was a good martial artist. And one of the things you see, like, they're doing an article and talking about who he's been with, and the legendary Ed Parker. You see that today. You see where, like, when Anderson Silva, um, you know, hooked up with Steven Seagal, and then they tried to give Steven Seagal some kind of credit as far as, some kind of credit as being a consultant or trainer for Anderson Silva, and most of you guys are like, that's BS. The old stretching machine. If I'm not mistaken, I think we still have one of these at the Team Rock gym. I think I've seen this thing around, and to some degree it works. But of course, good old fashioned partner drills, to get that extra stretch. They still work too if you know how to do it. A lot of stuff was taught back then. Uh, the big collection of books, videos that you would need, and you can place your order. And I want to say that I don't think I've ever had a problem with getting anything back when I did order. And then a lot of this stuff you could find on the secondary market for trading, for used books. There's even a used bookstore in Fayetteville that I like, that I can find some of this stuff. Maybe not all of it to this degree, but a lot of it. Gene LeBell, Grappling Master, the nunchucks. Everybody had some nunchucks back in the day. Wing Chun. We had a Wing Chun guy stop by the gym a couple weeks ago, and he was looking to test his style. And I wasn't going to change our format, for any reason. Uh, the American karate kicks. Oh man, you gotta love those. I wasn't gonna change our format for any reason, but you know, I told him if he came in, he could work with our guys and he could try it out on them, and they were gonna do MMA. And in the warm up, I could see that it was just too much for him. And he was a good guy, a really nice guy. But then he tried to go hard with a couple of the guys, and one of the guys wasn't even a fighter and it wasn't even experienced, but he had been training at the gym for a couple of months, and he was handling him easily. And this guy had, like, I think he said 8 years of Wing Chun, and then of course I put in a guy with some years under him, and he handled him even faster. He just didn't understand that these guys don't just train their techniques, but they also train the mindset and the conditioning that goes with it. And I think that to me is what a lot of the traditional martial arts are missing, is just an understanding where they fit. I still say they fit, but you have to understand that you have to go through processes of, a curriculum, competition, and combative aspects, and then you have to start figuring out, like, hey, maybe this reverse punch that I'm doing works, but I've got to be able to do 400 of them, train myself to do 400 so I can pull off the 3 or 4 in a fight. They didn't understand the principle of overloading and that kind of training. Oleg Taktarov, and he's even got an advertisement. And like I said, this is about 3 years into the UFC being here, and you're starting to see a lot of jiu-jitsu advertisements, a lot of MMA advertisements, and of course you're still in that phase where fighters are still talking about their styles. So you can sell Oleg Taktarov, the Russian Bear. You can sell the jiu-jitsu by a particular athlete. You can sell the wrestling tapes by a particular athlete. I wonder if we have a Marcos Huas advertisement in this book. Usually somewhere you see the Vale Tudo. I'm not sure if we were at UFC 7 in '96. I think we were. I think we were already here. They're talking about the truth about no holds barred fights. And again, these things are just really talking about these articles back in the day went one or two ways. Either they badmouth MMA, or they said, hey, it was a good show, but that's all it is. It's a show because they have rules. It's not related to real fighting. And that's because when you have other arts that don't have a competitive arena, you have to kind of level, the mystique behind the other competitions by saying, well, they have rules, and what makes us special is that we don't have rules. But at the same time, they don't display it anywhere. They don't put it on display. And look up Matt Thornton and just listen to some of his commentaries on why some of these martial arts didn't work. And one of the things that he always talks about is that the UFC had everything on public display, and you saw what worked and what didn't work. Walt Bayless, he had his combat jiu-jitsu system at the time. Never saw it on display, but he did a great job talking about it. And I think I borrowed some videotapes. I didn't buy them, but I borrowed some videotapes from a friend. And, like I said, Bayless was okay, but it was that one point that was always missing. Hey, it's not on display, not on display. You got to put it on display somewhere, you know, to prove it somewhere, somehow. We need some evidence. What's wrong with a martial artist creating his own system? I haven't read this article in years, but I would say this is, if you just ask that question to me today, based on everything I've gone through with fighters and thinking about some of the happy accidents that have happened in the gym, where I know for a fact that I've seen blue belts beat black belts in the context of mixed martial arts, what I would tell you is you can't just grab a bunch of techniques and say, I like these, and I'm going to put these together, or grab systems and say, okay, we're just going to train these 3 or 4 systems and put these things together. It's such a huge breakdown when it comes to understanding systems and knowing what you're getting out of those systems, and I think they're using Chuck Norris and Benny Urquidez here as examples, because they were people who have put their names on systems, and called something, the Chuck Norris system. I forget what it was actually called back in the day, but they actually have their own systems and curriculums. But again, you have to study the processes. You have to go through curriculums. You have to go through competition and combative fitness, understanding performance, and knowing those basic principles. A lot of guys are in shape to fight, but they're not in combat shape to fight. So Wally J had his jiu-jitsu system. Of course, the legend Bruce Lee. Let's keep moving through. Battle of the Arts. This is the Tai Chi versus the Wing Chun. And I think the author, if I'm not mistaken, the author is both a Wing Chun practitioner. Yeah, there he is. He's a Wing Chun practitioner and a Tai Chi practitioner. So it's just a perspective article, saying, hey, this, and this. And you see all these techniques, but the problem is you're not seeing it live. You're not seeing the responses. And then when you do go to YouTube and you pull something up like this, what you don't always see the best guy doing it. The warrior. And if you look at this was early, and these types of freestanding training mechanisms, these were early modules for a lot of stuff you see now. I think you've seen one where Bas Rutten uses one where he's working a lot of head movement and stuff like that. So, these were early, and you could almost say they were based on the Wing Chun dummy. And there's another influence. The Wing Chun dummy was one of the first apparatuses that had the extended arms and things of that nature. Jiu-jitsu videos, Gracie Academy. Greg Kukak was, I think it was the first American to be given a black belt by the Gracie family. He was the first real outsider. I'll put it that way. I might be wrong about outsider, but I think he was the first American, because I don't know if they gave it to anybody from, say, other countries or whatever. Man, you gotta love this. Again, a lot of advertisements, because remember, magazines like this back in the day couldn't just support themselves by posting up on the internet. And with the internet, so much you could do for free. Back then, you had to have sponsors. So a lot of advertisements all over this magazine. 170 pages. You're going to see tons of advertisements. Yeah, and tournaments. Tons of advertisements. Tournaments, videotapes, training, certifications. Paul Vunak, the Street Fighting series. Oh my God. There are going to be a lot of guys to tell you, hey, I don't know who this guy was. There's one guy on YouTube that I actually kind of like, Freddy something, Freddy's Kung Fu. He's funny to me, but he hates Vunok. You know, he talks crap about Vunok, but to me it's funny. But Vunok, you know, was the man back in the day. In his videotapes, he had very good demonstration. Allegedly worked with the SEALs. I don't know for a fact. I've heard guys tell me that they worked with him, but at the same time, you know, he was just another one of those guys. And he, in that system, very few guys, you know, put it on the line. And then you start having the whole original JKD concepts, the progressive guys, the concept guys. And so you don't know who was who. So when you did see, Jeet Kune Do in MMA, you didn't know what was really working. You didn't know from what side of the house was making it work. You know, again, my thing was, who cares? Just make it work for yourself. You don't take it out of the gym until you have something substantial. And again, equipment, belts, bags, swords. You're gonna see it all. And see, that was the beauty about these magazines, is they couldn't just cater to anybody who just wanted to see your martial art work. They just couldn't cater to a street fighter. They just couldn't cater to anybody who wanted to see a bare knuckle brawl. They had to cater to the whole spectrum of martial arts. Those who did it for fun, those who did it for fitness, and that's why you see so many varying advertisements. You know, if you get a comic book from back in the day, you know, you might only see toys, a pro wrestling advertisement. You're not going to see a jujitsu advertisement inside of a comic book, even though that character in the comic book may actually be talking about jujitsu, but you're not going to see an advertisement for it. And reason being is because it just didn't cater to their market, and it wasn't big here. By advertising in such a way, these magazines, Inside Kung Fu, Black Belt, Martial Arts Illustrated, all these, I'm pretty sure they had tons of sponsors who kept them going. And I think what shut them down, and I'm not going to say all the way down, because some of these places still print stuff. But the problem with printing, competing against the internet, you don't want to put the money into something that's just going to be a waste. And, you know, here's the things, like comic books went through this phase where they were valuable at one point. And so were trading cards, like baseball cards and basketball cards. And to some degree, those things still have some value until someone, you know, burns the market out. And I don't know where to get these magazines. But like I said, you can go to comic book stores and find comic books on 4 or 5 different shelves, but you can't find these old magazines anywhere in abundance. And when you do find them, you know, they're in there with the Sports Illustrateds. And again, some of these are great resources to have, especially if you're doing historical stuff and you're writing articles about styles and things of that nature. Again, just walking you down memory lane. More advertisements. I think I've seen this series. Mark Layla or Lala, George Dillman and his Pressure Point stuff. And this is the funny thing. It's like, this is the stuff you see on YouTube now, where people are like fake martial artists, bullshito. It's a Gracie advertisement. And you gotta love the Gracie's ingenuity when it came to marketing themselves. And I don't find anything wrong with it, because, you know, what's the saying, that like, it's not bragging if you can back it up. You know, it ain't tricking if you got it. So they could back it up. You know, it's just that I think a lot of people had a problem with them because of the way they came onto the scene and said, "Hey, we can do this or we can do that," and that's what they had a problem with. You know, you grow up, you know, doing street fights and things of that nature, and understanding the nature of how a street fight might happen. You understand that mindset where you have to prove yourself, or somebody's going to come up and test you. You understand it completely. Shoot fighting, I think this was Bart Vale back in the day. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything here. Combat Sambo, Tony Lopez. I might have seen some videos online, the stuff that he does. Black Belt had their own lineup as well. See who we got here. We got some Kempo, practical kicking. I can't remember this guy, but he used to do some cool stuff with the jiu-jitsu. You know, a lot of traditional stuff. Again, and to me, this is genius because not only do you advertise Century stuff, you advertise Paul Vunak's line, the Gracie line, you advertise Panther line, you advertise your own line as well. And that's something you also see in comic books. When they didn't have sponsors, they just sold you the next comic book. They would say, hey, we got no sponsors for this book, so buy another book that we're selling, you know. And a genius. And I think it's something you can look back at these things and pull something out of and say, okay, this is how I should be doing business on the internet. You know, if you don't have a sponsor, be your own sponsor for right now. It's Eskrima. I never dug the Eskrima stuff when it came to the Blade stuff. You know, I just never found a situation where I had, I think this is the little short, I forget what you used to call it, like the pocket stick thing, the Kubaton, I forget what you call it, but I never had an opportunity where there was a blade in my hand and someone else had a blade, or I needed to use a blade as an equalizer or anything like that. But I did like the stick stuff. There's a video online where these guys are fighting in military fatigues, and they start off with sticks, but one of the guys loses a stick and finds a stick on the ground. I like sticks because you can find a stick anywhere. You can, a mop, a broom handle, you can find a stick just about anywhere. Again, more leg stretching stuff. And I think the advertisers paid by the page, you know, whether they got half the page or the whole page or a dual layout. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure, you know, these magazines they tell an interesting story, all right, attract a good audience to get the sponsors. Because if your readership, you know, is in the thousands, especially the tens, the 100,000s, then you're going to get everybody wanting to be a sponsor and take out an ad in your magazine. So, like I said, a lot of this stuff is great. Here's the Panther stuff: Frank Cucci, Bill Wallace, Augustine Fong. I saw this series. I remember my kickboxing coach was like, "Hey, let's get this series and do a review on it." And we got it, and he asked me, you know, what my opinions were, and I was like, I like some of the martial art, but they didn't explain a lot, and they seemed to be like young in the martial art, and they skipped over a lot of things. So, you know, they would go from one foot movement to another punching movement, but they wouldn't explain the connection. They would explain the movements separately. So it wouldn't be hand movement to hand movement to a hand movement. It would be sporadic. It'd be, okay, this is a tumble movement. This is a kicking movement. This is a grappling movement. This is a punching movement. And so that was the only thing I didn't like about that series back in the day. Frank Cucci was one of the first people to actually do some form of mixed martial arts here on the East Coast in his gym. It was called the Virginia Free Fighting Championships, I think it was. But I met him. He's a cool guy. He was the JKD guy at the time, black belt under Pedro Sauer. Benny Quitas. Benny is a world champion in kickboxing. Legit. Muay Thai was just coming over to the East Coast in the early stages. You would find individuals maybe running a school or talking about it, or some guys who had training, especially through the military, but we didn't really have a lot of schools. And most of the Muay Thai you saw was Midwest and West Coast, you know, California. I know Greg Nelson was doing a lot of stuff in Minnesota, but we really didn't have it over here on the East Coast at the time. And again, this is 96, so you don't get the internet in a big way until about 98, 2000. What we were getting before then were a lot of the message boards. So if you knew about anything that was local to you or anything that was live, it was through a local a message board, or you had these magazines. And through a message board, it's really hard because if the guys don't load up pictures or videos, or if that format did not have the capability to allow you to put videos and pictures in there, you had to read these guys describe this art, this technique, this training method. And that's why these magazines still sold. As long as you couldn't compete with the content, you couldn't compete with the exposure. That's Vunak again. So Vunak had a series with Panther, and then he had the previous stuff that I showed you. Yeah, this was his business, advertising under his progressive fighting systems. And then he had something with Panther. I think the Panther production stuff was first. Again, this was our internet back in the day. But anyway, I just wanted to walk down memory lane and show you like how we armed ourselves knowledge-wise when it came to martial arts back in the day. I am Coach Sess, and you've had words with the Mad Coach.